Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside the Pigskin. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. Glad to have you with us tonight. Great show lined up. Have a great crew as we always do. And I'll go to my right. We're going to introduce Jordan Long. Welcome back, Jordan. Glad to have you back as always.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
My pleasure. Rick Curdy, we know there's never a shortage of opinions, and I'm sure you'll give us your best shot tonight. Glad to have you back, Rick.
Thank you, Scott.
And Mel Farr Jr., the guy I hand the rock off to an awful lot, my favorite running back, friend, brother, etc. Welcome back, Mel.
Great to be back.
And Candy Ebling's doing double duty tonight. Earlier before this show, she was on Chicks and Salsa. Candy, welcome back, and give everybody an overview of what you talked about at Chicks and Salsa with Kerry Johnson and Jennifer Matthews Lewis.
So we talked a little bit about the NFL, the playoffs. We talked about LeBron James almost getting close to eclipsing Kareem's all-time scoring record, which is kind of unbelievable. And then we talked about a little bit about college, the playoff, the championship game last night. Those were the topics we really talked about tonight.
Very good. Well, just so everybody knows that Candy Ebling and I happen to cover the Jacksonville Jaguars Tennessee Titans game on Saturday. What a classic. We're going to head back up to Jacksonville this weekend to cover the Los Angeles Chargers, by the way. No, not San Diego, because I know you like to talk San Diego, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And their lone meeting this year, the Jacksonville Jaguars won 38-10. We'll see if they can pull off another victory against the Chargers. So with that said, we have a really busy agenda tonight. So we're going to talk about coaching vacancies. We're going to talk about some playoff teams that didn't make it the previous season. We'll talk about Bill Belichick, most head coaches hired since the NFL merger, and we have some games on tap. So hope you can stay with us for the duration of the broadcast. And Candy, why don't you let everybody know they can get hold of us before we get this bad boy rolling?
So if you haven't subscribed to us yet, that little red button down in the lower right corner, please hit subscribe, and you'll get all of our different broadcasts. If you'd like to listen to us, we're on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. And then if you have show ideas, please email us, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And our website is www.southfloridatribune.com.
Thank you very much, Candy. All right. Topic number one, coaching vacancies. I'm going to break them down one by one. As it stands, we only have 5 to talk about. I'm not asking you guys to predict where they're going to wind up. We'll talk about the 5 major ones that come to mind. And how do you not start with the Houston debacle? 2 one-and-done black coaches, David Culley and Lovie Smith, are gone. And I think that's such a really, really, really bad look. Mel Farr, I know, to me, it's just one of those things that who wants to go to Houston at this particular point, Mel?
I don't know. I mean, that's a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
You don't get an opportunity to put your program in place. I mean, it takes a little time for a turnaround, especially when you're talking about a team like Houston and what they did. They traded away their franchise quarterback. You had no real quarterback. I think you had Davis Love or whatever the guy's name is that they had in there at quarterback, and then I think they had somebody else. I can't think of his name, but they're devoid of talent in so many places. But the one thing Lovie gave him. I guess Lovie kind of gave him the finger on the way out by winning that game, so that they didn't get the number 1 overall pick. So at least he left out of there on a high note. But we know Lovie Smith can coach. That's one thing we know. Now, the coach they hired last year, I didn't understand that one at all. I'd never heard of the guy before. It's great that he got the opportunity. Obviously, I'm happy for him to have the opportunity. But but you really need to give the guy a real chance to turn around the program. You look at what the coach with Detroit, look how they performed last year. A lot of people were scratching their heads that he came back, Dan Campbell, that he came back, and you look at what they were able to accomplish this year, and you have to say, patience pays off. And that's one thing about the Lions I can say is they do have a little bit of patience, although they probably didn't show as much with Jim Caldwell, but that's another story for another day.
Right.
But it's an unfortunate situation because we know Lovie can coach. He took the Chicago Bears to the playoffs with Rex Grossman as their quarterback, and to the Super Bowl rather.
Right.
With Rex Grossman as a quarterback. So we know he can coach. He just needs an opportunity to be able to put his program into place. So I don't know who would want that job. You'd have to be insane to take that job. And so we'll have to see what comes of it. I mean, that place has been a dumpster fire ever since the old man passed away and left it to his son. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, Bob McNair. Yeah, that's true. It really has been. Hi, Will Vogel. Thanks for tuning in. I agree. All right, Jordan, turn it over to you.
I will say that the Houston Texans are just dysfunctional. I mean, like Mel said, you have Lovie Smith, you have the other guy. You fire him after 1 year, that's not going to cut it. You need to at least be there for 2 to 3 years. Especially, I know that Bob McNair passed away, but it's just so dysfunctional. I know Lovie Smith can coach, like Mel said, but again, who wants that job? It's probably the worst one in the NFL in terms of NFL jobs. Yeah, it's one of 32, but again, how much power is the head coach going to have? It just seems like if you have another bad year, you get fired. It's just such a dysfunctional franchise.
Well, 11-38-1 doesn't help the case either. So the next person walking into that hornet's nest, good luck to him. All right. And speaking of hornet's nest, the guy that lives in an area where there is a Hornets basketball, we'll turn over to Rick Curdy.
I just don't understand this organization, what they're doing. Why do you hire coaches and fire them after 1 year? To make it worse, they're both African American, and the NFL is bad at hiring minority coaches. So I don't understand this at all. It makes absolutely no sense. Coley was last year. They fired him after 1 year. He had no Deshaun Watson. You bring Lovie Smith, who's a great coach. You fire him after 1 year. I don't understand what they're doing. It's mind-boggling what's going on there. And I don't care who you are. No coach should go there. Harbaugh, Peyton, all these coordinators, stay away from Houston. It is absolutely poisoned with incompetency.
Candy?
Where do I start? I mean, how do I follow all you guys? It's the same old story. Like what, one and done like that. That's to graduate and to go into like the NBA or like a different sport. Come on, not a coach. Your coach has to take. It takes time to build rapport and to really gel with the players and to get them to buy into your system. You can't just come in and say, I mean, let's face it. Nathaniel Hackett, he did an awful job in Denver. Like, I mean, I'm speechless because really, I just don't understand anyone going in and taking a job that you have everybody set in place, and then you want them to mold to your way of doing things when the last person did it some way different. You're not talking about 15-year-olds or you're talking about grown men that already have their kind of set in their ways. You know, they have a style that they're good with. And if you're not a coach that can adapt to the players, you're never going to be successful. You have to learn how to adapt to them, but yet get them to buy into your system and how you want to run things.
Well, you know, Mel, you're right. Okay. Lovie Smith let the Texans know that, you know, I don't like you anymore. And it was okay to play to win the game as another guy that I won't mention because he's in my doghouse to begin with from last week. But I will tell you one thing, whether they have the first or second pick, there's no reason why the Texans can't get a franchise quarterback, considering there are some good ones out there with the second pick. Whether anybody were to trade up over them to Chicago to get their pick, depending on what they do with Justin Fields, another story. I do believe the Texans will get their franchise quarterback, but that to me is an absolute mess. Stay away from Houston, even though somebody's going to get it. And for the next coach that does get it, I hope he has clauses in his contract about this one and done thing and having enough time to implement their program, because right now what we've seen is a first-class peril with the Houston Texans. So I wanted to lead off with this topic because I think that as I saw it occur, to me, it was an absolute joke that this organization could be run like a Mickey Mouse operation. I thought that Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck were located in Orange County, California, Disneyland or Disney World, but not in Houston. But we'll leave that for another night. So with that said, we have 4 other vacancies I want to get to, and some of these will be a little simpler than the Houston one. Carolina Panthers, Steve Wilkes is in my opinion, the only choice. He's 6-6 as an interim guy. But the thing, I'm going to lead off with this one because Steve Wilkes made more in-season changes than I've seen many interim guys get the opportunity to do in season. Yes, okay, Christian McCaffrey was traded to the 49ers, and they made a few other changes. Don't care to get into it. It's not necessary. But I think, to me, Jennifer Lewis actually asked me today when we were talking what my odds are of thinking that Wilkes will get the job. I said 50-50 or 60-40 in favor of Wilkes because there are some good candidates out there. So I didn't want to quite give him the job. I mean, the Rooney Rule's already there, and they'll probably bring in one or two minorities as well just to make sure that the hiring process is fair. But to me, I don't think there's any other choice but Steve Wilkes. This is an absolute no-brainer. With that said, okay, Mel, give me your take on the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I think Carolina played very, very tough for Steve Wilkes. He didn't get much of an opportunity out there in Arizona, as we know, and he seems to be a good coach. I think because this is a copycat league, and there's teams like your Buffaloes, Kansas City, teams that put up a lot of points. Even Detroit, I mean, they put up a lot of points, but they're not very flashy. But Kansas City is very flashy. You saw them with the little snow globe, what they did. They're real flashy. They got dynamic. They have a dynamic quarterback. Buffalo, they have a dynamic quarterback. But nobody likes old-fashioned football like Tennessee plays, Pittsburgh plays. But it's winning football. Running the ball more than you throw it. And I think Steve Wilkes, because he comes from the defensive side of the ball, that's the type of coach that he is. He wants to run, he wants to establish the line of scrimmage. He wants to win the line of scrimmage. He wants to play bully ball. And it's really going to be up to the owner as to whether or not that's something that he wants to do. Is he in it for entertainment, or is he in it to win football games? And I know he has the locker room support. The players like him, and the players played hard for him. Carolina is it's going to be a tough job because you don't have a quarterback. You don't know who your quarterback is at the moment. You have some guys there, but you don't really have a franchise quarterback, and he's done very, very, very well without having a franchise quarterback at Carolina. And I would just hope that if he does get the job full time, that they give him an opportunity to really implement his program and see where they can go.
Okay, Jordan.
I have to say, if you look at them firing their first the head coach, and then you're getting Steve Wilkes, you want players to play well for the interim, and that's what they did. If you look at it, he brought back Keep Pounding. That's what Jennifer Matthews-Lewis kept saying. We want to bring back Keep Pounding. They did. So the question remains, did he do enough to have the job full time? I really think he did, but again, that's up to the ownership. That's not up to me. And then if they don't, like Mel said, you still have to get a franchise quarterback because Sam Darnold is not a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I remember before I turn over to you, Rick, that Wayne Fonts inherited a situation over Darryl Rogers, and you talk about an interim guy who won the heart of Mr. Ford. Mel, you and I both know it probably all too well. And Wayne went on to have a pretty good run with the Lions, and he's the last coach on record that won a playoff game. So with that said, Rick, we're in your backyard on this one. Some thoughts about Steve Wilkes.
He needs to be the head coach. The problem is David Tepper's an idiot. Okay, he's a crook. He's an idiot, and he wants flash. He wants a dynamic, young offensive coordinator. That's what he's looking for, and he's been interviewing offensive coordinators. I think he's going to be interviewing Frank Reich, Jim Caldwell. So those are not bad, but other ones are young, flashy offensive coordinators. One's from the Eagles, one's from the Lions. It's a no-brainer. They went 6-6. They almost made the playoffs. They had 3 home wins under Steve Wilkes. Under Matt Rule, they had 1 home win in a year and a half. He was awful. And Tepper, he's not from Charlotte. He's from Pittsburgh. He doesn't understand the city. He's really and people just do not like him in Charlotte. They do not like him at all. And so I'm just afraid he's going to go and hire some young, flashy offensive coordinator like a Josh McDaniel. We see how that's worked out with the Raiders. And, and for Sam Darnold, he's done a good enough job. You know, you don't have to be Patrick Mahomes. You know, he could be Alex Smith. You know, he's played a lot better. So give him a couple of years there. Yeah, of course, get a franchise quarterback. But Steve Wilkes needs to be the head coach. Everybody here in Charlotte wants him. He's from Charlotte. He went to school in Charlotte. He was there. You know, he knows all about the DNA of the Panthers, and he's bringing that back. So we want Steve Wilkes here. We don't want Sean Payton. We don't want Harbaugh. We want Steve Wilkes in Charlotte.
Didn't he go to the same high school as Jerry Richardson?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, one name actually being talked about for that job is Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. So he's a name that you're going to see a lot. I mean, let's face it, the reality what Ben did with Goff is nothing short.
The Lions need to pay him whatever they need to pay him to keep him.
Oh, no doubt about that. Yeah, I agree with you all the way.
That's a big yawn in Charlotte. We don't care about him. We want Steve Wilkes.
Well, no, I think he's rightfully deserved the job.
Yeah, the problem is that Tepper is a combination of Dan Snyder and a combination of Mark Davis. That's who David Tepper is. And he just wants flash. And, you know, Steve Wilkes is old school. You know, he's middle-aged man. He's just got tons of experience. I mean, it's all about wins.
There's nothing wrong with old school. I mean, everybody likes the flashy new toys.
Yeah, and I know. I want wins.
Kyle Shanahan's and all that. There's nothing wrong
and they
with
want these good-looking coaches like Matt LaFleur and Josh McDaniel. We want these good-looking, you know, and Sean McVay. We want these GQ-looking, flashy, good-looking, handsome head coaches. And who cares?
Look at Brian Daboll. I mean, he's doing a heck of a job up there.
Daboll's getting great. Yeah.
Yeah, all Brian Daboll had was great credentials, and the Giants they were fortunate to land him. All right, Candy, we'll leave you with the final word on this. Like I said, I mentioned at the top of this particular topic, I believe that Steve Wilkes is the only choice. The only thing the Panthers have to do is go through the hiring process and make it fair for everybody. But in the end, it's Steve Wilkes' job in Charlotte. Okay, Candy, go ahead.
Well, the least appealing part of the job is the fact that they don't have a good quarterback. But the biggest draw for the Panthers location is what will likely be a wide open NFC South. If Tom Brady, who's a free agent, doesn't sign back with Tampa Bay or simply retires, none of the teams have a franchise quarterback in place. Atlanta is rebuilding. New Orleans is in a terrible salary cap spot. And Tampa would have to replace Brady while likely also being in a tight salary cap spot. That could position the Panthers for a quick leap to the top of the division with the right hire and the right choice of quarterback.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, now I have no choice but to lead off with Jordan on this one because of the backyard. Well, technically, he's got two backyards, one that he's at now and one that he really resides in, but you know where I'm going with this, Jordan. We're going to talk with the Denver Broncos. All I can tell you is they're going to throw Walmart money out there, and I think Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh are the two names that are being looked upon here. So I'll turn it over to Jordan since we're in Denver territory. Go ahead, my friend.
I will have to say, I mean, like Rick and I were talking about it before the show that, you know, Nathaniel Hackett was a problem. The thing is, if you look at the Denver job, the thing that's really appealing is, you have a franchise quarterback in Russell Wilson. You also have a great defense, a top 10 defense. So if we can get an offensive line here in Denver to protect Russell Wilson, we'll be fine. The thing is, though, they've talked to Jim Harbaugh. All you need is to give him a blank check. I would love Sean Payton because Payton knows how to work with, Drew Brees, who was a franchise quarterback, an older quarterback. The problem is what's the compensation going to be? I don't know because we don't really have that much. I believe we have first-round picks that the Niners gave us. Then we have like a third, a fourth, fifth, and a sixth. That's not going to be enough. But the fact is we do have Walmart money. We can give the Saints a blank check or even Jim Harbaugh a blank check. The thing is, though, if we don't go after those guys and they say, oh, no, we don't want them. I would agree with what Scott said before the show. Dan Quinn, he has a head coaching experience. I do think the ownership group of the Walton Penner Group is going to look for someone who has head coaching experience. We don't want to go the route, which we've done the last 3 times, is a coach with no head coaching experience.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I'm going to say this before I turn over to Rick. if you even consider going with one there's only one name, and I've been saying it for the longest time, and I've learned to be consistent. I wonder who you think I'm going to. Who do you think?
Eric Bieniemy.
The enemy, that a boy. Boy, Jordan, you learned it well with the GMGA great minds think alike. I swear to God, there's hope for you in broadcasting after all. Just kidding. You're there, brother. But no, Eric Bieniemy would be the guy who obviously played at University of Colorado. Is that correct? So I think if you're looking for a local Rocky Mountain hire, this would definitely be it. But I agree with you with the choices that you're looking at. I believe Dan Quinn was considered for the job a year ago, wasn't he?
He was a finalist.
Right. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of the hires. Sean Payton, he's chomping at the bit to turn Russell Wilson's career around. Jim Harbaugh obviously has done unbelievable things at Michigan. And Dan Quinn, I think, falls into the Tommy Lasorda category because God delays does not mean that God denies. And if that doesn't work out, bring in Eric Bieniemy for gosh sakes. I think he'll be all right. And you've only seen him twice a year at Kansas City. And I think we can all say that Kansas City is pretty good. All right, Rick.
Well, we've been talking about how these coaches get one shot and they're fired by Houston and how that's not fair. This was fair with Nathaniel Hackett being fired because he was incredibly incompetent and way over his head. Nice guy, horrible coach, great offensive coordinator. Anyway, they're going to go after Sean Payton and Harbaugh. They want the big splash. I don't think they have the compensation to do it. They got the money, but the New Orleans wants some draft picks, and they gave a lot of draft picks to get Russell Wilson. So I think they're going to go the Dan Quinn route. I think he'll be the next head coach. He does have a connection with Russell Wilson in Seattle. So I think I think Russell will be fine. I blame this all on Nathaniel Hackett. And I think they'll be better. They could be the Cinderella team next year if they get the right coach. Look at Jacksonville. They were the laughingstock last year. Look what they've done in 1 year. Already playoffs, division champions. I can see that with Denver. I would not be surprised if they get the right head coach. I don't think they can go wrong with either Payton or Harbaugh. But I think Dan Quinn will get the job, and I think he'll do a great job in Denver.
And, Rick, before I turn over to Mel, I like the fact that you tied Dan Quinn to Russell Wilson with their Seattle thing. And there's a little bit of intrigue there. More so now because I don't believe when he interviewed for the job they had Wilson, if I don't recall correctly.
They didn't. No.
Yeah, so that's a great connection, Rick. Thanks for bringing that up. All right,
yeah,
Mel.
Mock.
Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, there you go. So go ahead, Mel. Rick had me speechless for a quick moment because he acted like a journalist this time and mentioned the fact that Quinn and Russell Wilson. So, yeah, Rick, it's okay. You're making progress in journalism. And, while I like to kid around with my people here, just to know there'll be a new show debuting later on in January called The Celebrity and the Journalist. That show will be between myself and JB Ellis. So I look forward to those updates. And either Candy Ebling or Jennifer Matthews Lewis will be moderating at one or both. We'll see what happens. But JB Ellis and I differ on this one, and that's why it's going to make it what we consider another hit between Sideline Sports and South Florida Tribune. All right, Mel, give me your take on the Denver situation.
Well, I mean, you talk about Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, the negative side of that is that Dan Quinn also knows Russell Wilson, that he knows Russell Wilson, and he knows what they were talking about in the building in Seattle about Russell Wilson, about what he can do and what he can't do. So he knows what Russell's capable of, and also knows the things that the negative things that might have caused Seattle to part ways with him. I think that I like Jim Harbaugh. I've always been a Harbaugh fan. I'm not a Michigan fan, but I do like Jim Harbaugh.
Right.
And I like what he did at San Francisco. Like what he did at Stanford. Like what he did at San Diego when he was at San Diego. I mean, the guy's been a winner everywhere he's been. Everywhere he's gone, he's been a winner. Stanford was irrelevant when he took over that program, and he left them and they became relevant. San Francisco was a dumpster fire when he got there, and he took them to numerous NFC championship games and to the Super Bowl. So, and obviously Michigan, we know what kind of state the program was in when he took it over, and he's been to the college playoffs twice now, and he's beat Ohio State the last couple of years. So I'm a Jim Harbaugh guy. He can turn that program around. There's no question about it. The thing, having Russell Wilson there is great, but I think the thing, Jim likes to run the football, and I think that'll be good for Russell because there won't be so much pressure on him. all this let Russ cook stuff that needs to go away. Russ just needs to operate within the offense. I don't think that Russell Wilson is the type of quarterback at this time in his career that you can say that he can carry a team. He needs a team. He needs a supporting cast. Everything gets better when you have a run game. All of a sudden, the offensive line is a lot better. All of a sudden, your wide receivers are better, and your running backs are better, and your defense is better. Your defense is fresh and not on the field all the time. So I think that would be good. Now whether Jim wants the job or not, that's going to be the determining factor. But from everything I hear, that ownership group likes him. They're willing to pay him whatever they need to do and to pay him. The only downside to it, I believe, would be him playing him being in the AFC conference where he'd have to square off against his brother in the AFC conference. I think he would rather meet him in the Super Bowl as opposed to meeting him in a championship game. But I like Harbaugh to Denver.
All right, Candy, you got double duty on this. You got Mr. Vogel wants to ask you a question about Green Bay, and then you can talk about the Denver Broncos. Which way are you going first, Candy? You're going to go with Vogel, or are you going to talk about Denver?
So I think they tie together because let's face it, last year when Denver hired Nathaniel Hackett away from the Packers, everybody was like, oh no, are they going to get Aaron Rodgers to Denver instead of the whole Wilson? Because they thought it would be a package. It wasn't. They didn't get Rodgers. Rodgers stayed in Green Bay. Rodgers has had one of the worst years he ever has had in the NFL. So the question is, would Matt LaFleur bring Nathaniel Hackett back and revise that offense? I think it's definitely possible. Honestly, I think Green Bay needs a lot of help. I think they need to let Barry go as well and bring in Jim Leonard. So bring in Jim Leonard and bring in Nathaniel Hackett. Sure, why not? Give him a chance. He's a good offensive mind. He just isn't a good head coach. He's not ready. So do I think Denver? I think Denver's a good place to go. I do not think Russell Wilson is over and done with. I remember when he came to Wisconsin and played his last senior year at Wisconsin and the excitement he brought. He's not, like Mel said, though, he's not a guy that can carry the whole team on his back. He needs the supporting cast. So do I think Harbaugh could go there? Of course I think he could go there. Do I think he could be successful there? Yes, I do. Dan Quinn? Yeah, I think he could be successful and he'd be a good candidate as well. The Walmart group, they can shell out what they want they could outbid just about anybody. So I think they just have to decide which candidate they really want, which one they think is going to be successful as well with who you have there now as well.
I like the logistics of the way the Walmart group is really showing the aggressive nature that they'll make a change and they don't care about it. That's what you need. Pat Bowlen died. The franchise was in great shape for many, many years. They brought on John Elway, delivered him a Super Bowl, brought in Peyton Manning, but they haven't been relevant the last few years. So the fact that you have new ownership now with a fresh look and a big checkbook doesn't hurt either. So Jordan and I pretty much summarized our thought, and Rick Curdy was playing journalist tonight, so that's okay, Rick. You'll be have an opportunity to play journalist a lot more times than what you did tonight. And we'll go down to the desert where the Arizona Cardinals need a new GM and a coach. Cliff Kingsbury was a mistake hire, and this thing is wide open. So since you currently are in Arizona, Mr. Long, why don't you give us a little bit of desert take on this thing?
I think, honestly, everybody here thinks that Cliff Kingsbury lasted one more year than he should have. Yeah, they signed an extension last year, which didn't make 10 months ago, didn't make a whole lot of sense because what has he done in the NFL? One playoff appearance. It just felt like it was time for him to go. Now they also need to find a new general manager to help with personnel moves. It's going to be very interesting, but I also heard that Kyler Murray, their quarterback, is going to help in the process of the head coach. That doesn't make sense to me at all. It means that the quarterback has a little bit more power than we all thought. But in the end, though, I honestly think Arizona needs to go with a guy that has head coaching experience because it hasn't worked the last two times. I mean, I know Steve Wilkes didn't have a fair shake. Cliff Kingsbury had more of a fair Shake didn't really work out, but I do think they need a head coach with head coaching experience who can actually work with Kyler Murray. It just seemed like Cliff Kingsbury could not.
Right, and we're not going to divulge any head coaching candidates for Arizona now. The only reason why we've done it with Denver is because there are a lot of big names being floated out there. But we're going to save this for other episodes in the coming weeks. And, we'll probably be doing some more Inside the Pigskins, at least for the next couple of weeks on Tuesday night, just so you know, before we go back to Thursday night later on until baseball kicks in. So, folks, if you're following Inside the Pigskin, you could be seeing a couple of episodes on Tuesday night like we are doing tonight. All right, Rick, what's your take on the Arizona situation?
Now, we talked about the Texans as the worst. This is the second worst coaching job here. You have a totally dysfunctional organization. To me, doesn't know what in the world they're doing. This is what they get for getting Steve Wilkes gone after 1 year, drafting Josh Rosen, number 10, getting rid of him, and for a 7th-round pick, you trade him. Makes absolutely no sense what they're doing. They have a toddler for a quarterback. A childish toddler who would rather play video games than be a great quarterback.
Right.
And now he's going to be part of the head coaching. It's so dysfunctional there. Kingsbury is completely overrated. No, not a surprise he's gone. Who would want to go there? It's a mess in Arizona. It's just incompetent ownership, incompetent what's going on. They need a new GM. He left the first time for health reasons. Now he's not coming back. Who knows what's going on there? It's a complete, utter mess. I would stay away from Arizona. I heard maybe I don't know who might go there. Probably some new offensive coordinator. I don't know, but it's a mess. This is the second worst head coaching vacancy.
And the Arizona vacancy is one we're probably going to just sit on it for a little while, because you generally do when there's a general manager and a coaching opening with the general manager intent to bring his own people in. Well, what's your take on what's going on in Arizona?
Well, we you can see the writing on the wall with Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, he's lost the locker room. Him and Kyler weren't getting along very well. Kyler's, shouting at him coming off the field. So you knew that the day was coming. Now, as far as getting Kyler involved in the process, as far as a coach, you want to find somebody that he can get along with. I mean, you just gave the guy $230 million, so he should be involved in the process. You should make sure it's somebody that he can get along with and that he can flourish under. But you had to look at Steve Keim. I think it was time for him to go. He's the one that made those decisions. He's the one that decided to fire the one guy after a year. He decided to draft Josh Rosen, which I was never, even though he's a UCLA guy, I was never very high on him. And then decided to trade him away and bring in Kyler Murray. So it's time for him to go. It's time for some fresh blood, some fresh ideas, some fresh eyes in Arizona. Now, mind you, it's not as bad as a franchise as you guys are making it out to be. I mean, they have been to a Super Bowl or two, if I'm not mistaken. And it wasn't too far in the distant past that they have gone to a Super Bowl, and they were a pretty competitive team. Right now, they're a little dysfunctional because of their coach. I mean, they had a kid, the team, and he didn't have full grasp of the team. Team didn't seem to be very disciplined. So I think once they get an adult there, I think you'll see a turnaround in that program.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually at the Super Bowl in Tampa when they played Pittsburgh, one of the best games I've ever seen. Super Bowl, I think 43. All right, Candy, some thoughts on this one? We have one more coaching situation, too. Then we're going to transition over to the playoffs. All right, Candace.
Well, with both the coaching and the GM gone, the question is how much control are you going to give the head coach? Will you hire a new GM, or are you going to give the head coach a little more firepower and responsibilities? So would someone want more responsibilities and control more? You don't have a lot of weapons behind Kyler Murray, though. Yes, you paid him a lot of money and he's a franchise quarterback, but who do you have left on the team? You just had your biggest defensive player of the year retired. J.J. Watt isn't there anymore. Who else do you have? What kind of a team do you want to go with? Are you the coach that wants to build around a franchise quarterback and has the ability to do so? That's the question. Are you, football minded, or what? And how much power are you going to get?
That's fair enough. All right, last coaching vacancy at the moment, because I'm sure there might be one or two, three more before it's all said and done. Indianapolis Colts will Jeff Saturday continue to coach on Sunday. I don't think he's going to be on Monday night for a while, but all right, we'll turn it over to you, Mel. What do you think about Jeff Saturday?
As far as whether he should get the job,
Yeah, whether he should be retained or not, or where you think this head coaching search is going.
yeah,
I don't think a lot of people really put
he
the
needs
blame on him.
to go back into broadcasting.
Okay.
I mean that's it, short and sweet.
Okay.
It was a failed experiment, put it like that.
Okay, fair enough. Jordan?
I have to agree with Mel. It was a failed experiment with Jeff Saturday. Jim Irsay just found him because he's, good buddies with him and said, hey, why don't you coach? Yeah, it didn't work out. I don't think Jeff Saturday will get another chance. He should be back in ESPN analyzing, everything about football. As for their head coaching vacancy, it all depends on who Jim Irsay really wants. And I'm not sure he even knows what he wants.
Well, if anything, I'll say that Chris Ballard is more under fire now, and he needs to get this one right, Rick?
Yeah, this is another mess. Jeff Saturday needs to go away. This was a complete joke. I think we all saw it. I mean, they should have got Gus Bradley to be the interim. I mean, he's had head coaching experience. I'm sure he's not very happy. I would leave if I was him. I mean, that's a slap in the face to everyone on that staff to get a guy from ESPN. I mean, it was just stupid. And Irsay, I don't know what's going on with him. He's made some dumb moves. They need to draft a franchise quarterback. Stop with the revolving door of old quarterbacks. No Derek Carr. None of this stuff. You need to draft a quarterback, get a head coach, and just they're gonna have to rebuild because they're just a mess right now in Indianapolis right now.
As I understand, I believe the Colts have the 4th overall pick in the draft, so there's no reason why they should be able to find a quarterback and develop them. And they have in the past, Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. So they've had much better success in the draft than they have bringing in people. I mean, I know Phillip Rivers was actually the best veteran that has come in recent years. Unfortunately, he didn't stay around long, but I agree. They need to get this hire right. And Jeff Saturday, I think he was unfortunately thrust into a difficult situation. And Gus Bradley, I've worked with him in the past at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you won't find a nicer guy than Gus Bradley, more qualified, and he's moved around the assistant ranks. So, whether he gets a job, and some guys are just meant to be coordinators, I don't think you could have gone wrong with Gus Bradley on a short-term basis. And again, he had a tough situation here in Jacksonville, where they didn't have a lot of talent, and he had a fair chance there. At least one thing I'll say about Shad Khan, he's a very patient owner, compared. So sometimes when you run into a situation where you have patient owners, that either works for you or against you, because you may not get hired again. As they say, if they gave you enough time and you couldn't get the program turned around, it could work against you. But Rick, I'm with you on that. You're playing your journalism cap twice. I think you nailed on Gus Bradley. You're 2 for 2. All right, Candy, go ahead on the Colts.
Multiple coaches fired, multiple quarterbacks benched, all blotted out. The Colts used to have been one of the most stable franchises in the game. Irsay clearly ran out of patience, but the biggest issue has been they have not recovered since Andrew Luck's sudden retirement in 2019. They've had successive one-year marriages with Rivers, Wentz, Ryan, all fell short. The new coach, whoever he is, also has some players that are coming off some injuries and some subpar seasons. Jonathan Taylor, Shaquille Leonard, Quentin Nelson among them. Irsay has been patient in the past, but he wasn't this year. They have to nail this one. One name, Harbaugh. He used to play for him.
Right.
Maybe going back. I mean, let's face it. Irsay brought Saturday back. Maybe he's going to bring Harbaugh back.
Candy, that's interesting. I've heard Jim Harbaugh's name brought up in connection with that job. So, I'm going to watch out for that one, and we'll see how this one plays out. All right. Now we're done with all the coaching stuff. I'm going to go over some basic statistics here about the playoffs. The playoffs, here's a great one that I pulled up. Playoff teams that did not make the playoffs the previous season, 33 straight seasons with 4+ teams to do so. This year's crop includes the New York Giants, the Minnesota Vikings, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Baltimore Ravens, Miami Dolphins, and the LA Chargers. If that doesn't define parity, then I don't know what the heck does, right, Jordan? Think about it. 33 straight years where you have 4+ playoff teams. That's unreal.
It's very interesting that you can't, if you don't make the playoffs the one year, that still means you can make it the next year. It's definitely parity, but it's a copycat league. You find out what works. And especially free agency. I mean, free agency has definitely changed the game because every team has a salary cap to go out and get free agents to improve the team. Look at Jacksonville. I believe they had the most salary cap to use, and they did it wisely, and they found pieces to put together. But still, just because you don't make the playoffs one year doesn't mean you can't make it the next year. All you have to do is build a better team with free agency. It's a really interesting stat that you brought up.
Well, what's interesting about the Jacksonville situation, and we mentioned this last week, that Byron Leftwich didn't want the job because he didn't want to work with Trent Baalke. How'd that turn out? Bringing Doug Peterson. Byron Leftwich is looking for his first coaching job, and Doug Peterson is looking like the king of Jacksonville. I know I've only been there with the Cowboys winning the Titans, and we'll see if they can get it done again on Saturday. Rick, what do you think of this stat? If this doesn't define parity, tell me what the word means.
I think it's fantastic to see the Giants back. I'm so happy for Jacksonville. I'm a huge Doug Peterson fan. I've defended him so many years. Even the Eagles. I mean, you have Eagles fans so happy for Jacksonville. I mean, they love the man. He's still beloved in Philadelphia. And I think it's great. And another interesting stat, this is the first time in I don't know how many years they have all three Florida teams in the playoffs: Tampa Bay, Miami, and Jacksonville. So there's another stat for you, Scott.
Yeah, I thought about putting that one on, but I figured one of you guys are going to be sharp enough to do it. And now you're 3 for 3 wearing the journalism cap, Curdy. And by the way, make sure you have a few more tonight for tomorrow's edition of the Sports Exchange following Pundits Pundit. Good job, Rick. You've come a long way, my man. All right, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot about parity in the NFL. And I think it's good, that the New York Giants are back in the playoffs. I think that's good for the game, good for the league. But it also, when you have teams that are on their rookie quarterback, you see how you're able to spread that money around and, have some depth. And you need to take advantage of the opportunities when you do have a quarterback on that rookie contract like Jacksonville does. So I'm more impressed with a team like Kansas City and what they've been able to do with Patrick Mahomes with his contract. And they find this guy Pacheco or whatever out of Rutgers. I mean, this guy here is just, the Kansas City. I mean, it's just like plug and play. I mean, you thought they lost like 1,600 yards with Tyreek, but yet Mahomes goes out and throws for more yards than he's thrown for in his career. He set a record, I think, for most scrimmage yards. He broke Drew Brees' record for most yards from scrimmage in a year. So, what they're able to do, what Kansas City's able to do in the salary cap era with a franchise quarterback getting paid, to me, says a lot about them and the type of players that they're able to acquire. Andy Reid as a coach, it's really amazing what they've been able to do. It's the sustained success that they've been able to enjoy, even having a quarterback making the kind of money that they're making. But yeah, it's nice. So, the Lions almost got there. A little bit. They're 1 to 3 games better than I thought they would be. Real happy. I mean, I thought at first, I was like, who is this clown they're hiring? Again, I told you guys, I watched Hard Knocks. I'm like, man, this guy, he might work because he's a blue collar type guy. That's a blue collar city. And the players just respond to him. And so I'm really looking forward to the Lions jumping in there next year because, I mean, they finished strong, winning 8 out of the last 10 games. After starting out, I think 1-6, and they win 8 out of the last 10. That's strong.
Well, Mel, as I heard stories about Dan Campbell's Zoom interview with the Fords, he went out there and wowed them with the fact that he wanted this job. You want to talk about the energy put into an interview. I mean, what he did was just as impressive about what Wayne Fontes did when he went to William Clay Ford and wanted it. So more power to him. So, Candy, you got the last word on the parity, and then we got some more good stuff coming our way.
I think it's very interesting that all Florida teams are in the playoffs. I would have never guessed. The Jacksonville Jaguars would leapfrog from being the worst team 2 years in a row, really, up to being taking the division. I mean, granted, they didn't blow everybody away, but it's amazing how much improved they are with Doug Peterson. He's a really great coach. Uh, am I surprised? No, because like Jordan was saying, there with free agency, there's so many people going to different teams for different reasons. Would I have ever thought Devontae Adams would have left Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers? No, but the fact is that Aaron Rodgers was waffling and didn't know if he was going to come back, and Devontae wanted, to play with somebody that he knew and knew was going to be there. So he left. So the league has changed a lot, in the years. Free agency has definitely changed things. I think some teams, some players have maybe too much control. And when I say that is, I think Aaron Rodgers exposed a lot with the Packers, because let's face it, without Nathaniel Hackett, they were horrible this year. He's a prima donna, and I think that the stars I think people need to emulate more like Tom Brady. Let's face it, Tom Brady took pay cuts to get more people around him so that he could go places. When he went to Tampa Bay, he brought people with him. You have to mold your team around who you are, and I think coaches need to, and some of them have done this very well, coached to the strengths of their players. And it's not always just your system that's going to work, but how is the strength of your players going to work within your system? And so, yes, I think some coaches have done a much better job of that. Look at Dan Campbell. The Detroit Lions, they were 5-1 in our division this year against divisional opponents. And who would have guessed that going in? So I think it's just a lot of parity has come to the league, and I like it because I think it makes it more interesting and more fun. Do I want to see the dynasties that the Patriots had for how long? No. I like to see different teams in there. That makes it more fun for more of the fan bases too, because it brings everybody more in to get in. And especially the casual fans, let's face it. It makes the NFL a better product on the field.
Well, you make several key points. All right, I'll go back to Will Vogel. Fun fact, Mahomes is the oldest QB on the AFC side playoffs, and he's 27. Scary thought, okay? And he says, how about that, Scott? Okay, well, so we have a unofficial sixth host here, even though he's creating a lot of the activity in the chat room. More power to you, Will. Appreciate that fun fact, although it is pretty good. It's hard to imagine that Patrick Holmes is 27. What does that make all of us? No comment. One of a few. But I think that one thing it shows you about the parity here, though, when you compare this to baseball doesn't have a salary cap, so you have the haves versus the have-nots. For the NFL, the revenue sharing makes it easier for smaller markets to compete. So I want to talk about a couple of coaches real quick, then we're going to talk about a few other things. I told you folks at the top of the broadcast, this is going to be a loaded show, and I'm living up to that. And I'm glad that we're going to get it all in because there's a lot to talk about. So if you're just joining us, feel free to go ahead and watch it again as often as you want. And just so you know, Inside the Pigskin can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune, and we're striving for 1,000 subscribers. And of course, this show is being seen on Facebook Live. You can also find it on Twitter at Tribune South, and we have lots of different ways to get it out there in addition to the YouTube channel. All right, a couple coaching notes, okay? Bill Belichick is 25-25 since Tom Brady left. And how about Mike Tomlin going 9-8, and he still does not have a losing season? I can tell you what, I thought this was a year that Tomlin would, but what, Kenny Pickett slid in there very nicely. And more power to Coach Tomlin. I mean, if there's ever a year he would have had a losing season, this would have been it. And Bill Belichick just proved he was human, okay? 25-25 since Tom Brady. Tom Brady also, by the way, Bill, has a Super Bowl. You haven't since he left. We'll pick up the narrative from there, Jordan.
The thing about Bill Belichick is you hit it on the head. He doesn't have Tom Brady. He's trying to do it his way. I mean, he had Greg Zappe as his quarterback. Also, you know, he does have a first-round draft pick, Mac Jones as his quarterback, but they're not Tom Brady. So I wasn't surprised to see him go down. As for Mike Tomlin, I definitely thought with the switch at quarterbacks that he was going to end up going to a not record that was going to be above 500. It just shows you how consistent Mike Tomlin is. He's one of the best coaches out there. I really thought he was going to get fired if he ended up with a losing record. Didn't happen. Hats off to him, because that is really hard to do, to not have a losing season.
Well, the Steelers don't fire anybody. How many head coaches have they had?
Three.
Right, exactly. They've
they're-
only had
they're-
3.
Yeah, right. They're, to me, you want to talk about the class organizations in the NFL. The Steelers easily rank in the top few. All right, Rick. With that said, you got Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin.
No surprise, all dynasties ends, and this is what happens. They either become mediocre or they fall from the face of the earth. They're just a mediocre team. I think the debate was who did it. Was it Tom Brady or Belichick? Brady's winning that because he won a Super Bowl somewhere else. Belichick, he wasn't that great with the Browns. He's 500 right now, but he's only sticking around because he just wants to break Don Shula's record. He's close to breaking Don Shula's record, so he's still got a couple of years left. But as soon as he breaks that record, he'll go away. He'll go to the Hall of Fame. But yeah, no surprise there. And what was the other part, Scott? I'm sorry.
Well, you talk about Mike Tomlin and you talk
Tomlin.
about Bill Belichick.
Tomlin is an excellent, excellent coach. This guy is so unappreciated. Every year I keep hearing he should get fired. He should get. Why in the world would you want to fire the man? He never lost in a season. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. I mean, he's so consistent, and this is the least talent that he's had. He had a rookie quarterback. Trubisky's been it hasn't worked out with Trubisky. I wasn't a fan of Trubisky. And I thought, they'll go he'll have 4 or 5 wins. And that's okay because they're rebuilding. And for what he's done, it's been amazing. Great, great coach. Very unappreciated.
Well, I mean, like I said before, the Roonies are the classiest organization. The way they
Exactly.
run. So what else can you say? All right, Mel.
Yeah, Bill Belichick. I mean, you look at his record without Tom Brady, has not been very good. When he was at Cleveland, wasn't very good before Tom Brady started there in New England. It wasn't very good, and obviously after Tom Brady left, it has not gone all that well for him. But Mac Jones, I think, is a good quarterback. They didn't do him. We talked about it earlier in the year. They didn't do Mac Jones any favor by not giving him an offensive coordinator,
Right.
by bringing Matt Patricia over, a defensive guy, a defensive coordinator, making him an offensive coordinator. My brother ran into a similar situation his senior year in college. His junior year, he set the receptions record for a wide receiver. Troy Aikman was the quarterback, and a guy by the name of Coach Axman was offensive coordinator. Well, he ended up taking a coaching job, I think, in Northern Arizona, a head coaching job, and they brought the defensive line coach and made him offensive coordinator, and their offense was horrible the next year. So you're not doing the guy any favors. So you really, you have to kind of look at this season. Mac Jones, unfortunately, this year, you just had to write it off, because they digressed. He didn't make any progress, and that's not his fault. That's the smartest guy in the room's fault. That's Bill Belichick's fault. He thinks a great coach, can coach any position. I mean, he can think that if he wants to, but the proof is in the pudding. As far as Mike Tomlin, it looked tough, man. And I know I was thinking about that all year long. It looked tough. It looked like it was going to be very, very difficult for him to get to 9 wins and not have a losing season, because offensively, at the beginning of the year, they weren't playing very well. I know they were calling for Matt Canada. A lot of people wanted him to get fired. Mike Tomlin was steady, patient, cool, calm, as he always is. And it seemed like the offense started to get going a little bit towards the latter part of the year, especially when they made the change at quarterback. I've never been real high in Mitchell Trubisky, but the kid that they drafted, Kenny Pickett, looks good. That connection to Pickens, that's you're going to be hearing that quite a bit in the coming years, because that kid from Georgia can flat out play. So I'm looking forward to what they're going to do next year. I mean, this year was a great year for him to get a lot of experience. He's got a lot of experience now, and we'll see what they're going to do next year. Hopefully that offense continues to evolve and get better. We know they're going to play defense. We know they're going to be sound on the defense side of the ball. So looking forward to seeing what Pittsburgh's going to do next year.
Candy?
Let's face it, Bill Belichick, he'll go down as a great coach. Let's face it. But Who did he lose back in January of 2022? Josh McDaniels, who was his, longtime sidekick, and who also took some more of the coaches away from Belichick. Belichick only had one of his offensive coaches left from a couple of years ago. So you take all those, you bring in new guys, you have a second year guy in Jones, you bring in Bailey Zappi, who's a brand new, and yet you have two offensive coordinators. Like, who's calling the plays? Who's developing everybody? And one of them is a defensive guy? Come on, really? You can't do that to rookies. Yeah, maybe a seasoned quarterback that you've had for a long time can handle two different guys calling the shots, but not young guys. They need stability. We've talked about how we thought Matt Stafford over at the Lions, when he kept having different offensive coordinators and stuff like that, all that consistency or lack thereof really affected his play. The same with Bill Belichick and his coaching tree. He hasn't had a lot of success in the coaching tree. Now, as far as Mike Tomlin, kudos to him. Kudos to, to having a winning season, somehow finding a way to, once your star quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, who you've had for how long, retires, and you bring in other guys, and you got to win. You learn how to play within the system, and you teach your guys to play within the system. Kudos to him.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Rick. Again, Belichick is there to get the record from Don Shula, and he's done, period.
Yep.
And what can I say about Mike Tomlin? I mean, the guy is that if you can win with this group, the future looks bright in Pittsburgh. All right, well, we'll stay on the head coaching theme a little bit, but this one's a very interesting stat that I pulled that I had no choice but to incorporate here, considering where we're going. But the most head coaches hired since the NFL merger. You ready for these numbers? These will stagger every one of you. The Browns have had 21. The Lions 18. The Bills 18. The Colts 18. The Jets 18. And the Cardinals will have 18 once the replacement is named for Cliff Kingsbury. All right, Jordan. I mean, we're talking about 18 and up. Okay, and this isn't the legal drinking age. We're talking about head coaching changes. And I don't like to bring alcohol on a show, but 18 and 21 are the common ages for which you can drink, depending on the state. And a lot of people are drinking the firing Kool-Aid. All right, Mr. Long.
It just shows you if you're, firing 18 to 23 or 21 coaches, you don't have consistency. You're not letting the coaches stay there for that long. Some of them are fired after a couple of years. Also, it just shows you how dysfunctional some of those franchises are. Cleveland, for instance, I mean, they don't give some of their coaches a fair shake. That's just way too many. You can't have that many, but yet they keep doing it.
And you want to mention the other ones? Is that the one that stands out to you?
It's the one that stands out because Cleveland, I mean, they just came back in the league, in 1999? I mean, you're still
true
firing. I mean, that's not that long of a franchise to do that. And yet, I believe you said 23, is it, for them?
21.
21. That's still way too many for Cleveland since they haven't been a franchise for that long. The other ones have been franchises for longer, so it doesn't surprise me with that. But with Cleveland, it really does stick out.
Hey, Rick?
I blame this. The blame for all of that is the ownership. They're the ones. That's their teams, and we've seen disastrous ownerships with the Browns. We just seen inconsistency, hiring people 1 or 2 years, firing them, and then you still got to pay them to the rest of their contract. Like the Cardinals, for example, they gave Kingsbury an extension, they fired him, so they still owe him for like 2 or probably 3 years. So he can sit on his behind for 2 or 3 years at home, and you still get paid. I mean, it's all ownership. The ownership, that's their team. They hire the people, they put the people in place, and that just shows you the dysfunction. And we talked about a team like the Steelers, who've had 3 head coaches, who Mike Tomlin probably would have been fired like 3 or 4 years ago if he was with the Browns or some other team. But because the Steelers are so consistent and so patient, and he's never had a losing record. So I blame all ownership on that.
Okay, Mel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Rick on that. I mean, that's a poor reflection on ownership. I mean, you have to look in the mirror. Somebody made those hires or somebody approved those hires. So if you're allowing your GM to make those hiring and firing decisions, then you hired that GM that's making those bad decisions. So it really is a reflection, like everybody said, it's a poor reflection on the franchise. And we know, being Detroiters, that our ownership prior to the current ownership, and William Clay Ford was very patient, but unfortunately didn't do a very good job of hiring coaches all the time, and that's one of the reasons why we're one of the only franchises that have not been to a Super Bowl. Right. So, hopefully, like I said, with the daughter in place right now, and with the people that she's got around her that's helping her and aiding her and advising her, that we'll see a change in that. But you have to be patient with some of these guys. You hiring and firing, it's kind of like getting married and getting divorced because you see a cute girl. That's not the deal. I mean, the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence. Sometimes if you water and nurture and fertilize your grass, it can be just as green as your neighbor's grass. So and they, you can see that these owners aren't taking heed to that memo that the league sent out that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, about these salaries that they're paying for these front office personnel and all these coaches. I think it's over $1 billion in salaries that they're paying the front office personnel and head coaches and coaches that are no longer employed by these folks. So they're paying a whole lot of money. So they have money. The ownership has money. And, the sad thing about it is they'll waste it on coaches, but they won't spend this money on the players.
Good point. I'll say, before I turn over to Candy, say one thing about the Detroit Lions. When they have a head coach and they leave, they generally don't get hired. And that's unfortunate. And I think that there could have been a couple that, like Jim Caldwell, I even think Jim Shorts really deserved another opportunity somewhere. But, again, when the Lions head coaches leave, they don't get hired.
That's a retirement job. That's that's the job you take when you want to retire.
Well, then the Lions should have hired Lovie Smith, but he's not ready to retire. But Jim Caldwell was a heck of a coach, and we've always talked about that on a lot of our shows. But we're not going to give Rick a chance to be a journalist fifth time because he's got games to talk about in a couple seconds. All right, Candy. Some take on what the numerals I threw at you that range from 18 to 21. And before Candy gets involved here, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Jets on that list at some point or another, too. And I'll be curious to see whether or not Robert Saleh will last more than 2-3 years either. I mean, I hope he does, but you never know. The Jets haven't been overly consistent, and they're desperate for a win and miss the playoffs again. All right, take it away, Candy.
So I think this goes back to this being an instant society. We want results now. We want results now. We want to make the splashy, flashy hires. We want to make news because we want to bring more money into our organization. So we want to make the splashy, quick hires. I agree with Mel. We need to be patient. We need to, before you hire somebody, don't just say, okay, well, this person's going after this person or this person or this person. Sit down and really, really, really evaluate your organization and what you really need and what you really want. And then devise a timetable. You can't just say one and done. And if you're going to do some of that, and I know this is not going to be a popular opinion, put some incentives into these coaches' contracts.
Interesting.
You can put some incentives in some of the players' contracts. Why not in some of the coaches' contracts? Instead of maybe extending them as long as you are, well, if you reach this, you get this bonus. I mean, most industries, you have those kind of bonuses and stuff like that. Put some of those in there. That might help.
Yeah, kicker clauses I've seen that's a good point, Candy. We'll get some feedback on that one. All right, now that we've gotten all the particulars and the records and the stats that I heavily researched, we get to talk about the games. We don't have to get into a whole lot of detail. I'm just going to ask each and every one of you to give predictions on all the games. Let's start off with you, Jordan. Seahawks versus 49ers Saturday at 4:30.
I have the 49ers, just the better team. I mean, Geno Smith has had a great year, but San Francisco is better.
The only thing I'll say about that is the Seahawks should be sending the Lions some actual fish from the Pike Street Market because at least they got in the playoffs, but they get to be the beat down there, in my opinion, for that. All right, Chargers at Jacksonville. Bear in mind these games are on Saturday at 8:15. The last time these two squads met, Jacksonville won 38-10. Who do you have there, Jordan?
I can see this going either way, but I think Jacksonville at home, and especially since the Chargers played their starters last week and got a little bit banged up. I have Jacksonville.
Okay, we'll take you to Sunday. Miami at Buffalo, Jordan.
Buffalo.
Okay. Giants at Minnesota.
Whew, that's a tough game.
Well,
I'm going to go with
nobody's-
I'm going to go with the upset there. I'm going to go with the Giants just because Minnesota hasn't looked good the last few weeks.
Okay, last one on Sunday. Baltimore Ravens at Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Okay. And finally, Monday night, Dallas Cowboys at Tampa Bay Bucks.
I think Dallas is the better team. I like their offense and their defense over Tampa Bay. Sure, Tampa Bay has a Tom Brady, but I got to go with Dallas.
Okay, we'll turn over to Rick. I'm going to go over the games, each and every one of you, and then everybody gets a crack at it. Seahawks at 49ers, Rick.
Oh, 49ers, they're red hot. And, Seattle's a nice story, but Gino's turning back into a pumpkin again. I see 49ers winning easily.
Okay. Chargers at Jacksonville, Rick.
Oh, I love Jacksonville. What Doug Peterson has done has been truly amazing to me. He's my coach of the year in the NFL. I like Jacksonville.
Okay. On the Sunday, Monday, Miami at Buffalo.
Buffalo in a rout. Miami just way inconsistent, and they have no quarterback. And Buffalo's just a way better team.
Giants in Minnesota.
I'm gonna go with Giants, like what Jordan says. Minnesota is a fraud. They start out red hot and they look really bad. And I like what Dable's doing. He's another candidate for coach of the year. So I like what the Giants are doing in an upset.
Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. Joe Burrow looks great. Cincinnati looks good. He looks like he's going to be the next quarterback there in the next 15, 20 years. And Cincinnati's really good.
Finally, Dallas at Tampa.
I'm going to go with the upset here. I guess Tampa, Tampa's got the losing record, but they're hosting it in Tampa. Dallas, I'm sorry, they choke every single first round. Dak is not a franchise quarterback. Dallas will lose again in the first round.
All right, on you, Mel. The drill, Seahawks at 49ers.
49ers.
Okay. Chargers at Jacksonville.
It wouldn't surprise me if Jacksonville won this game, but I'm gonna go with the Chargers.
Okay. Miami, Buffalo.
Yeah, that's easy. Buffalo. I mean, they have no quarterback. Miami has no quarterback. That's an easy one.
Yeah, that reminds me of an Abbott Costello, who's on first, what's on second, and all that. But in this case, we apply that analogy to the quarterbacks. All right. Giants at Minnesota, Mel.
I'm gonna go with Minnesota. Everybody else here likes the Giants. I'm gonna go with Minnesota in this. I think they're gonna figure out a way to. I think Kirk Cousins is gonna figure out a way to get it done.
Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati.
Yeah, as much as I like Baltimore, they don't have a quarterback either. I mean, I don't think Lamar is going to play. I don't think he should play. Why should he play? The team hasn't done him any favors. They haven't paid him. They haven't decided to pay him. So why should he go out there and risk his future? Right. So I'm gonna take Cincinnati.
And on Monday night, Dallas against the Bucks.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bucks. I think they'll find a way. They haven't looked good all year. I mean, they have not looked good all year long. But the Cowboys will find a way to lose it. So I'm gonna go with the Bucks.
All right, Candace, you've had time to listen to everybody, and then I'll get the last word in on that, and then everybody has parting shots.
49ers. Jacksonville, I have to admit, Jacksonville did not look that good this last week. Yes, their defense came up with the play of the game and scored that last touchdown, but they are at home, so I'm going to go with Jacksonville. Buffalo, Miami, it's going to be Buffalo. They're playing with just so much heart right now. They're playing for DeMar. Miami doesn't have a quarterback. Miami doesn't have it. They don't have a prayer against them. I don't think. Giants Vikings is an interesting game. That's probably the one that's probably the most difficult to call, I would say. Minnesota hasn't been playing real well. Kirk Cousins hasn't been playing the greatest. I'm going to go Giants with that one. I'm going to go Bengals over the Ravens. And then the whole question of the Tampa Bay Bucks game is what Dallas team is going to show up.
Right.
So I'm going to say Tampa Bay.
All right. I guess that leaves me. 49ers easily. Jacksonville, I got to ride with the Jaguars. And the way they've been playing, 5 in a row? The last time that they lost was to the Detroit Lions, 40-14, and they haven't looked back since. Miami, Buffalo, yeah, it's safe to say the Bills are going to walk away with a win there. I like the Giants over Minnesota due to the fact I don't really trust Minnesota at all. I just don't. Cincinnati, Baltimore, well, I think Joe Burrow, to me, is one of the top 3 quarterbacks, and he's on a mission since he came up short in the Super Bowl, and he's determined to get back there again. Dallas, Tampa, I got to go with the Buccaneers on this one. And I'll tell you why I'm going with the Buccaneers, because the Dallas Cowboys did not impress me whatsoever in their game against. They did not impress me in their game against Jacksonville. I mean, think about it. He had a 17-point, and he gave it away. Michael Strahan, we went downstairs and saying, how is Jacksonville going to get back in it? Well, Michael, you played in the game a long time. Yeah, there's 60 minutes, and the Jaguars proved that they ended up winning impressively that way. And I think that was probably the one game I think that really gave the Jaguars a lot of confidence to beat the Cowboys. So I'm going with Tampa in this one. I really, really am. And, yeah, Will Vogel, I am working the Jacksonville game this weekend with Candy up over at TIAA Bank Stadium. Looking forward to being up there and see what's what. So, Will, once again, I really appreciate your contributions to the show. So there you have it. We'll have our report cards next Tuesday night. We will be doing another edition of Inside the Pigskin as well. So everybody on the crew will know that we'll all be back here to do it again. So with that said, now we'll go on to our parting shots, and Jordan, lead off.
So, of course, I am in 106 Stitches here on the South Florida Tribune. We know the Carlos Correa situation. I think it's finally been finalized. First, he went to the Giants, and something happened with his physical, and then thought he was going to go to the Mets. Well, he's coming home and staying with Minnesota, who he played for last year on a 6-year, $200 million contract, and it can max out to $270 million. Hopefully, his numbers were pretty good last year, so hopefully he can continue those numbers and help Minnesota actually become a playoff team.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, if you're going to wind up with anybody, who must wind up with Minnesota. I think Minnesota makes out well. I think that contract could be incentivized to $270 million with 4 extra years later, depending on what the kicker clause is. And hey, if he's going to pass the physical with anybody, he might as well pass it with the Twins since they had him last year. All right, Rick.
Well, usually I have an angry parting shot, but I feel a little sentimental today, and this is something that's near to my heart, something that's serious. We saw what happened with DeMar with Buffalo. He got discharged. He's out of the hospital, and thank God. That was a very scary, scary incident what happened. But also another football player who's also in critical condition as well that a lot of people, they're not really, you don't hear much about, is Peyton Hillis. He was at the beach, and his kids were almost drowning, and he went and saved them. And unfortunately, he's still in critical condition right now. So let's continue to pray for Peyton Hillis and DeMar. Hopefully they get better. Scary, scary situations going on in the NFL with some of these players. I know he's retired, but still. It reminded me of Tom Mees. I thought of Tom Mees right away when I thought of Peyton Hillis. So hopefully he'll be okay. And let's pray for both of those guys.
Yeah, I love Tom Mees. And I gave you an opportunity for a second one earlier, so go ahead and divulge that one.
Well, I know it's a little off topic, but me, I'm all about MLB expansion. I said it's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. I see Nashville getting a team who will join Nashville. We'll see what happens. Hopefully it's Charlotte. But anyway, Don Mattingly has actually been hired as a consultant for the new Nashville Stars. That's what they're going to be called, the Nashville Stars, when Major League Baseball does expand to Nashville. So exciting what's going on there. Dave Stewart's part of that as well. Nashville will definitely get an MLB team, and they deserve it. I think they'll do great, and that's kudos to them and Don Mattingly, who's to me is one of the brightest minds in all of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and I had the good pleasure of working over the last 3 years. I should point out, though, that Don Mattingly played for the Nashville Sounds when he was with the New York Yankees organization, and that's why I thought it's important to get him on there. I love working with Don. Our paths will definitely cross at some point anyways, and I know he has a new gig there. So, yeah, Don Will Vogel is with the Blue Jays as their bench coach, but he's also, nobody prohibits anybody from being a consultant for an expansion team. But yeah, he is. Well, you're on target there. So yeah, Don Mattingly, Nashville connection seems all too obvious. And I've actually, Candy and I have seen a game with the National Sounds at their place. And I'll tell you, if there's any area outside of Charlotte based on getting the stadium in place, those two I think would be the logical expansion candidates, knowing that the A's are hopeful, are inevitable probably to Las Vegas. We'll see how that plays out. All right, Mel, go ahead.
Well, I actually have two. They had the way too early top 25, and they're not showing my Bruins any respect. Don't have in the top 25. They got teams like University of Texas, San Antonio in the top 25. James Madison, I think they just became a FBS school this year, and they got them in the top 25 and don't have my Bruins. They need to put some respect on those UCLA Bruins. I have to offer out an apology and a congratulations to Dan Campbell. I mean, when he got hired and he was talking about biting kneecaps, I was like, who is this clown? I mean, what is he talking about? Who's going to respond to this guy? But like I said, I watched Hard Knocks earlier this year and really kind of started having a little better appreciation, a little better understanding of Dan Campbell, and then watching the way that those guys played. I mean, it didn't start out that good. I mean, they were 1-6 to start out the season, but they went on a tear at the end of the season and won 8 out of their last 10 ball games, and really have a lot of momentum. And I guess this is how we feel every year as Lion fans. We always seem like we have a lot of momentum going into the next year. But I really think that they're on the right track with this coach, because I think he's the right coach for that team and for that city. So really like to congratulate the Lions on a season. Although they didn't make it to the playoffs, I think there's a lot of positive things that can be taken from the season.
All right, Candy.
Green Bay, you all know, is near and dear to my heart. Matt LaFleur, you have a lot of coaching to do and a lot of thinking to do this offseason. Joe Barry should have been gone already. There is no way with the defensive weapons you had, we should have been as poor on defense and as inconsistent as we were. And then to have a rookie be ejected out of 2 different games this season tells me that you don't have control and you haven't coached your rookies. To have him push, I'm just sorry. That was just uncalled for, unheard of, pushing someone that was going to assist a player that was on the field. They're talking he could, more than just getting fined, he could be suspended yet. They probably won't, but Matt LaFleur, you got to do something, because if you can't, you're telling me you're not the coach that I think you could be. Get rid of your defensive coordinator. Hire back Nathaniel Hackett, because he was right for Rodgers. He did good by him. They were a good team together. I don't know if Rodgers stays or goes, but Green Bay Packers have wasted a really good quarterback to think that we've only won 1 Super Bowl. And if you think about it, we've had both Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and we've won how many Super Bowls, or even been to how many Super Bowls with those quarterbacks? 18 years, Rodgers. He's the longest tenured player for one team in the current modern era that has stayed with the same team.
And to answer your question, they've won 2. One for Rodgers, one for Favre.
Correct.
My parting shot, and I deliberately avoided this as a topic because I thought the NFL stuff we had was strong. The college football playoff got what they deserved. Georgia 65, TCU 7. And if you want me to repeat it again, Georgia 65, TCU 7. Just so you know, okay, TCU beat Michigan 51-45. Georgia beat Ohio State 42-41. Great semifinal games. And I understand what they were attempting to do is to get something different, and they didn't want to replay the Michigan-Ohio State. But boy, if hindsight were 2020, when you look at this Final Four, maybe that Michigan-Ohio State rematch wouldn't have looked that badly in the college football playoff. And then Georgia could have beat the daylights out of TCU earlier, and then Georgia would have either had Michigan or Ohio State. So the only thing I'm going to say about it is good riddance to the Final Four. Hello to the college football playoff when they expand by 12, because I have never seen a sport more flawed than college football. than they are. I mean, once upon a time, we used to decide these national championships by a computer. That wasn't good enough. We do it with an opinions. You don't have enough participants. The other divisions have it right. The ones with that consist of North Dakota State, South Dakota State. They have a legitimate playoff. And now it's taken all this time to come up with a playoff. Well, 12 teams will be all right. But you know what? To me, good job, college football playoff, because last night you got what you deserved. And I can only imagine what the ratings are going to be when that debacle's all said and done. Bring on the college football playoffs and bring on 12 because
How do you think the college football playoffs is going to make it better?
I don't know.
I mean, you're not going to have you think there'll be a Cinderella story. I mean, it's still going to end up being the same, except you might have a more competitive championship game. But the early round games, they aren't going to be competitive.
True, but you know what? In my opinion, how has March Madness worked out? Every now and then you only have 12 teams anyway. So
yeah, but basketball, you can have a Larry Bird at Indiana State, and you can get to the Sweet 16, or you can go all the way to the finals as Larry Bird did. You can take one player can change the team. Football is a team sport; it's a little bit different.
Well, all I can tell you is and you make some valid points too, Mel, without a doubt. But when you think about the fact that only 4 teams out of 130 division teams get in, to me, it seems a little slanted for all the wrong reasons. But I agree with you. I mean, nobody will ever say you won't have a rout in the final game. Nobody's ever and for many years we saw routes in the Super Bowl when you had a 2-week layover until things started to become more and more competitive, and we saw better games. But
did we really need a playoff to know that Georgia was the best football team this year?
Not in this particular case. You probably didn't, because it was pretty decisive from all year round. They turn players over into the pros and then they reload. But you know what? To me, it'll be it. But you got to remember another thing, though, Mel, too. While you might be right there, you have the transfer portal getting teams a lot more competitive faster, and name, image, and likeness, and an expanded college football playoff. So there'll be a lot of interesting variables that factor in to how these teams are competitive across the board. Good point, so Mel.
The rich getting richer.
Well,
yeah, it's all about money. That's all
I'd rather see 12 anyways. And again, America got what they wanted. Georgia 65, TCU 7. The best part about it was we had Fire Up Michigan last night, so it didn't matter. I didn't have to watch it.
So Scott, the answer to your question is ESPN Network's average 17.2 million viewers for Georgia's blowout win, making it the least viewed college football playoff championship game since the BCS era began in 1999.
Yeah, I was watching Sanford and Son reruns.
Well, there you go. Well, you know what? As they say in the courtroom, and I don't really like to be in those places, and I'm glad I've stayed away from them, I rest my case. Well, hello, college football playoff with 12. All right, with that said, give everybody an opportunity to let everybody know they get hold of them. All right, we'll lead off with you, Jordan. We'll let it off with you pretty much all night anyways. Why change things? Go ahead, pal.
So for Sideline Sports, you can find me on the NBA Carousel, which is hopefully going to start this month on Mondays. On Fridays, I have Under Review, which is my take on Colorado sports, with a sprinkling of national sports headlines as well. Obviously, on Tuesdays on the South Florida Tribune, I'm either going to be inside the Pigskin or 106 Stitches. And 108, sorry.
That's I only missed 2, but that's okay.
It's been a while, but yeah, 108.
If we want to create a new baseball show, we can always go 106 Stitches baseball talk, and you'll be my regular co-host. And we'll be on 108 Stitches. Just kidding with you, George. You've been
I know. It's been a while. So yeah, 108 Stitches. Also, I have a blog that I write Mondays through Thursdays with podcasts on Fridays at sports-scoop.com. Also follow me on Twitter at sportscoop1.
You're the best, Jordan. It's okay. Welcome back, my friend, and Happy New Year. We got a lot of bigger returns coming. All right, Rick, you got double duty tomorrow night. I know you're gearing up for it, but let everybody know they get hold of you.
You can find me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB, Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram as Charlotte Bats. I'm on Twitter, Charlotte Bats Baseball, and I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curdy. And if you have any comments or questions, you can email me at cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
And Rick can't appreciate you as much as we do with your help on social media, getting the content out there. And of course, your contributions a couple of times a week here. Keep up the good work. We're proud to have you, Jordan, and everybody that participates, Mel and Candy. All right, Mel, everybody know how they get hold of you, my friend.
On all the social media at Mel Farr Jr., Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and you can follow what we have going on in Georgia, down here in Georgia, and also in Michigan for the youth at melfar.org.
All right, Candy, I'll mention that you can find us on Twitter at Tribune South. Candy, take us home with the rest of the show. It'll end on a nice, intelligent female voice to let everybody know how they get a hold of us. Everything. Go ahead, Candy, take it home and close it up.
So you can find me Tuesday nights on the Sideline Sports Network on Chicks and Salsa. You can find me sprinkled in on the South Florida Tribune. Depending on what night it is, I might show up. Monday nights, we have Fire Up Michigan. Tuesday nights are typically, during the baseball season at least, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Or sometimes we'll throw Inside the Pigskin in. We have Sports Exchange. We have No Limits coming. And what other ones do we have? I think those are the big ones. We have Fire Up Wisconsin, which you'll see sporadically, and that one I host. You have Fire Up Florida. We really would like you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at South Florida Tribune, and we're striving for 1,000. Help us get there. And if you like to listen to podcasts, or you're driving home and you want to listen to us, you can find us on Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have ideas for the show, you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. If you want to advertise or sponsor this show or any of our shows on our network, please call Scott at 954-304-4941. Thank you.
Great job, Candy, as always. Great job to each and every one of you. We're proud of the contributions that you make here, as well as the people that participated in the chat room as well. Everything is greatly appreciated. So what else is there to say? I hope you enjoy your football week. We always enjoy the magazine style type of show because that's our main objective, is what you learn and what you get out of what we try to bring to the table. So just so you know, folks, Inside the Pigskin will return next Tuesday night, not Thursday. So stay there with the updates that we'll have them on Facebook, as well as all the social medias that Candy divulged. So on behalf of Jordan Long, Rick Curdy, Mel Farr Jr., Candy Ebling, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside the Pigskin. Have a great week, everybody. And coming up on South Florida Tribune YouTube channel tomorrow night, we have the Sports Exchange. But prior to that, we're going to have Pundit's Pundit with Jacob Christner and company. So we have a doubleheader tonight between Sideline Sports and the South Florida Tribune. And then Candy and I hit the road for Jacksonville later in the week. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. And thank you very much for joining us.